The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Tanya, and I'm the marketing manager over here at Struxsoft Solutions, part of the Great Tech Group. Just for those of you who are new with us today, our STAR solution MWF, which stands for Metal Wood Framer, is our Revit-based BIM framing solution that allows users to automate Revit walls, floors, ceilings, and trusses in light gauge steel and also in wood. Today, however, our technician Thais will be focusing on the Create Marker Lines tool and all of its features. So that includes how to add cap tracks to your panels, how to use marker lines to add whole series and or blocking to your panels, how to create a telescopic panel, the differences between using marker lines and properties tools, and then also how to modify marker lines. So just before we get going, I'd like to remind everyone that at the end of the webinar, if time permits, we'll be taking a couple of live questions. In order to be selected, please press the raise hand button on the dashboard. Just please also make sure that your mic is working correctly. If you'd prefer, you can also ask questions throughout the webinar by typing into the questions tab of the GoToWebinar dashboard. For those questions, we'll make sure to get back to you within 24 hours. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to hand off to Thais.
Thank you, Tanya. Hello, everyone. So as Tanya mentioned, today we're going to focus on the Create Marker Lines tool. So I'm just going to quickly select this panel here. The Create Marker Lines tool will be here under Markers. You do have to select a panel, or you can even select multiple panels if you wish. And you're going to see this dialog box showing up. You're going to have two tabs, so you are able to create marker lines horizontally or vertically in your panel. Some of the features you will be able to use both of these tabs, and some of them will be specific for horizontal lines or vertical lines. So for example, the cap tracks, the stud pack that we see here as the first option, this will be available only for when creating horizontal marker lines. When you go to the vertical tab, if you see here this ATS stud pack, this will be only available when you are creating vertical marker lines. Okay, so these are just two examples. The blocking as well, it's only going to be available in using horizontal marker lines. You're not going to be able, of course, to add blocking vertically. However, the whole series is something that you can either create horizontal or vertical marker lines to be able to assign your punches. So we're going to start by adding the cap tracks. So I'm just going to quickly close this for now. I just want to show where the cap track marker is. It's going to be under Marker Manager. And if you go to the Walls tab, Vertical Framing, and this is where you can find your cap track marker. So I created a second one here. And I'm not going to spend too much time in the settings here because we do have another webinar that goes over all the stud packs options that we have. So it also goes over the settings for cap tracks if you want to take a look at it. But basically what I did here was I added my family. I also set up the length of my cap track and how it's going to attach to my studs. So I'm adding it as back to back. So it will be back to back in relation to my studs. The other settings that you need to check off is which members of your panel you're going to be adding the cap track to. So in that case, I'm adding only to my kings. I do have an opening in my panel, and what I'm trying to achieve here is to add a reinforcement where my king is meeting my headers. Okay, so that's why I'm selecting to create those cap tracks only at my kings. So these are my settings. I'm gonna click OK here. And we will go back to our marker lines tool. And what we want to do is create horizontal marker lines. Okay, so we have three methods here. The first one is to convert existing model lines. So in this first option, you can go ahead and before entering the marker lines tool, you can just model your lines with Revit lines, and you will be placing exactly in the location that you wish for your panel. After creating the model lines, you can come here to your Create Marker Lines tool, and you can just check off this option to convert those marker lines into, convert those model lines into marker lines, okay? So you would just hit select and pick the model lines, and once you assign the settings that you wish, it will be converted to a marker line. Okay, so that's option number one. Option number two is to use the equal spacing. So it will follow the offset that you put in the maximum distance, and it will place as many lines as it can, going all the way up until the end of your panel. And the third option is regular spacing. So in this one, you are able to control how many lines you want to assign to your panel. So let's say if you just want one line, you can just modify the first offset. You can change your reference to be the bottom or top of your panel. So for example, right now I'm changing to top. So my line will be at 2 feet from the top of my panel. If I want to add extra lines, I can just add a number here. So let's say if I want to add 4 marker lines to my panel, and then I will be able to determine what is the first offset and also what is the spacing throughout my other lines, okay? So to add my cap track setting, I'm just gonna add 1 line. And my offset, I've measured this before, so my cap track would be 1 foot. So I do want my cap track going, stopping here at my header. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to add 2 feet and 2 inches. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is the correct distance for me to have the cap track, and the cap track will be stopping right at my header. So it's going to be referencing the top of my panel. And I'm going to go ahead and select Stat Pack and select that settings that we just saw, Cap Track 2, and hit OK. So I can see my line here, it got created. We do have to regenerate the panel in order to see the members. And there it is. So they are created. My cap tracks are located here close to my kings. Let's go to a section view here. So I have 1 cap track here at my first king and a second one here at my second king. So as you can see, it was placed back to back. The marker line will be at the center of my cap track. So I have 6 inches going down and 6 inches going up. And as any marker line, as you know probably already, if we move a little bit and we just hit regenerate, it will always follow that change. So if I select my panel here and hit regenerate, it will always follow the change. And the reason why it's only placing on my kings is because when we saw the settings, I've selected only the kings to place my cap tracks. So let's say if I want to modify those settings. If I select my line here, my marker line, and I go to properties, you're gonna see that if you have indeed a marker line, it's going to show up what properties you have assigned to that specific line. So in that case, we do have the cap track assigned. So we're gonna see here which settings you have assigned to that specific marker line. Okay, if it was a blocking or a whole series, or maybe even the telescopic configuration, you are able to manage the settings through here. But because it's a marker, if you want to modify the settings itself, you do have to go in Marker Manager and change the settings for your cap tracks in the Marker Manager. Okay, so you don't have that option here. The only thing that you can do through here right now is just check which settings you have and maybe change for another one. But if you just want to modify that existing one, you would need to come here to Marker Manager and look for your marker again. So let's say, for example, if I add cripples here to my list. So let's say if I do want to generate cap tracks for my cripples as well. So I'm gonna hit OK here. I'm going to update my marker. And once I regenerate this panel, I will see my cap tracks on my cripples as well. Okay, so let's move on to this other panel here. We're gonna add whole series and also blocking. So I'm gonna go back to markers, create marker lines. And I'm going to enable again my horizontal marker lines. And this time I'm going to use the equal spacing with a maximum distance. So let's just set this up to 4, for example. And now we're gonna assign some whole series to my panel. I do have some hole types here already, so I can just use an existing one that I have in my list. If it's a new project and you don't have any hole types yet, you can always select manage here, and you will be redirected to the hole type settings. You can just create your hole types here, hit save, and you will be able to see them here in the drop-down list. So I'm going to just select this 1-inch round hole. And I'm just gonna hit OK. And again, I will get my lines created. If I regenerate my lines, I will be able to see my hole types in my panel. So let's go to a 3D view. So there it is. And again, the cool thing about the marker lines is that you can always manually move them around in case you need. It's very quick and easy for you to modify in case you need. So let's say, for example, if I go ahead and delete this guy, I can just simply delete it with my keyboard delete. And once I regen, the holes will be gone. Now let's say I'm going to also add blocking. So let's go to create marker lines again. And this time, let's use the regular spacing, but let's say I want to add only one line here. And my first offset will be, let's say 6.4. I think that would be the middle, if I'm not mistaken. Again, is the same as the whole series. If you already have a configuration here, you can always use whatever you have in your drop-down list. If you still don't have anything, you can always check, select manage, and you will be redirected to the blocking settings. So this one is different than the horizontals that we see in properties. This guy here, as you can see, even the options, even though they are almost the same, you do have some minor differences. You can give a name to the settings. In the properties option, you don't really have that option to give a specific name to your settings. The other difference is that you also have some different advanced cutbacks available. So let's say, for example, in these settings here that I've added, if I go to my cutbacks, I am able to use the advanced option. So you are able to specify a cutback for one side of your blocking and another one for the other side of your blocking. That's not possible when you are using the horizontals options in properties. In that one, you're gonna be using the cutbacks that are assigned in properties, and they don't have that option where you can have different cutbacks depending on the side of your blocking. Okay, so if you need, for example, your blocking stopping at the hard side, but at the other stud, it needs to go all the way to the inner portion of your stud, you can use the marker lines to assign your blocking, because then you will be able to do this configuration here. The default families, the MWF default families, will already have that profile assigned to it, to them. Yeah, it's gonna be the C stud, but it will also work for I-beam, for tracks, and the rectangular one here is for wood. So in this case, it's just my default family. It's just a C-stud profile. So what I'm doing here is that on the hard side, it's gonna be stopping at my plane number 1. And when my blocking is meeting my open side of the stud, it will stop at my plane number 2, as you can see here. So you can either manage your configurations through here, or you can also go through under tools. You're gonna have blocking configurations. That option under tools will also be the same as the one that we use here for marker lines. So I'm just going to assign my settings here, click OK. And now I also have a line here for my blocking. I'm going to regenerate my panel. And if we come here to a section view, as you can see, I do have one side of the blocking going all the way to the inner portion of my stud. And at the other side, it's stopping at the hard side of my stud, so it's not going all the way through the stud. And again, if, let's say, for example, if I want to extend this to another panel, I am able to do that as well. So let's say if I extend it until there, and I click on regenerate, then my blocking will also go all the way through the other panel. If I, for example, make this a little bit smaller for my whole series and I regenerate again, I would get my punches in all of these studs, but not in the ones that my line is not clashing. So that's the other difference when it comes to whole series and blocking in properties and when using marker lines. You have a little bit of more flexibility to change the settings. Let's say if we add this at an angle, for example, this is supported by the marker lines, but it's not supported in the option that we have within properties. This would be something very difficult to achieve when you add whole series in properties. But if you're using marker lines, you can simply move them around and it will always follow that change. So that would be a good idea in case you need an angle like that with your punches. Or if you need advanced cutbacks for your blocking. Okay, so the other thing to note, let me just make this smaller. Let me drag this here. I'm going to regenerate again. So if we go here to a section view, you're going to see that my blocking is following exactly where my line is stopping. So if you want to change that, this will be in the blocking configuration. And again, if I select my line and I click in properties, I will be able to see what I have assigned to that specific marker line, and I am able to manage my blocking through here. So the option here to determine where the blocking is stopping is here. So right now it's forced end of line. So this means that it will stop exactly where my line is stopping. I can also choose to stop at nearest intersected member. So in that case, it will stop here. It would be the last stud where I have my line intersecting with a vertical member. Or I can just extend to the closest member after the end of the line. So that means that it will extend until this stud here. So let's say, for example, let me select my settings. Let's say if we extend to my closest member, I'm gonna hit update, okay, and okay. And we will regenerate this panel. So now it's not stopping here, floating in the air. It will go all the way to our next stud. So next option that we have in our marker lines menu is to create telescopic panels. So in that option, you are able to use both horizontal and vertical marker lines. However, this is specific for Howick families. So it is just in case you are creating Howick panels. The tool will only work that way because you need those specific families. So if you are using just the default SSMAS column family, it's not gonna work. So it needs to be the Howick families. So the feature is there for you to be able to assemble your panel in a different location and then transport it already assembled or pre-assembled. And then you will go to the construction site and you are able to expand that panel in its location. So it makes transportation easier. It makes installation easier. We're gonna test it out in this panel here, for example. So right now I do have some Howick families here, and we are going to add the marker lines. It's basically going to splice my studs and also my tracks. and it will add at the smaller pieces some R stud families that will slide in the main tracks and studs. So this will allow the panel to be smaller for transportation, and then it can be expanded in a custom size when it goes to the final location. So I'm going to go back here to my marker lines. Before going to the marker lines menu, of course, you have to load in the Howick families. And after that's done, you can, go ahead and create the settings in the marker lines, or you can come here beforehand in the under tools and create the telescopic configurations through here. But let's say if I go here to my create marker lines menu, I think I already have some settings here. So let's create first the horizontal lines. And oh, one last thing, let me just measure this panel. Okay, so I do need to know the length and also the height. The height is 12.8 and the length is 14.7. Okay, so let's go back here to my marker lines menu. And I'm going to create some horizontal marker lines. So I'm going to use the regular spacing, and I need to add 2 lines here for my panel. So the first one will be at 2.4 from the bottom of my panel. And then the second one will be at 8 feet. So I'm going to click on Telescopic. And I already have some settings here. But if you don't have anything, you can come here to Manage. And you will be redirected to the settings here. So what you need to do is just give a name. I gave horizontal just so I'll know that that setting refers the creation of horizontal lines. I also created one for my vertical lines. And it's pretty simple. You just have to select your telescopic family. So again, that's why you do need to use that for Howick panels. As you can see here, I am only able to select R-stud Howick families. So I'm just gonna select my family type here, and I'm able to add also a top and bottom extension. And the same goes for my vertical settings. The only difference is that I'm going to add a right and left extension. The family, it's going to be the same. And after this is all done, you can just assign your horizontal settings here for your horizontal lines. And then we're gonna come here to the second tab and create vertical lines. So I'm going to, again, use the regular spacing, 2 lines. And this time it's going to be referencing my start, the start of my panel. My first offset will be 2 feet. And the spacing will be 10 feet and 7 inches. Okay, and I'm going to come here to my telescopic configurations and add the vertical settings to my configurations. So now that everything is all set, I just have to click OK. I will see those lines being generated, and now I have to regenerate my panel. And you're going to see that, let me go to a 3D view. So you're going to see that now I have that splice and I have my R studs. This will be the portion of my R stud family. And it will go within the main family here, the main stud of my panel. So this means that this can slide all the way in. So this could be shorted. This could be extended depending on what you need to do to transport this panel. So you can make it smaller for transportation, and then once you get to the construction site and you place it in the correct location, you can go ahead and expand it to what you need. And sometimes it could even be a sloped panel, because then you would have enough control to be able to determine what is the height of the end of the panel and the beginning of the panel. So as you can see, it does that throughout my my panel. The 1 foot extension, that's the amount that this portion is going in my main stud. And as you can see, it does the same for my tracks as well. So I have one piece here and another piece here. So if I want to make this portion here smaller, I just have to change the extensions. And again, this is something that can only be achieved if you are using the marker lines, as well as the cap tracks. So the only two features that you are able to use in other locations, for example, in properties, are the whole series and the blocking. But the telescopic configuration and the cap tracks, you have to add the marker lines. Okay, so I think that's it. Let's go back to Tanya and see if we have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Thais. So as she just mentioned, we have time to answer a couple of live questions if there are any. So if you'd like to pose a question live, please raise your hand now by clicking on the hand icon in the control panel. Just please also make sure that your audio is working correctly. And just while we wait for any potential questions to come through, I'd just like to remind everyone that the recording of the presentation will be sent through tomorrow. As always, please feel free to share the recording with any colleagues. And if you're looking for the recording a little earlier, you can typically find it at the end of the day across our social media channels. All right, I'll just give it a couple of seconds. All right, well, that seems like it's a wrap for today. For any questions that had been submitted through the chat, we'll make sure to get back to you as soon as possible by email within 24 hours. As well as if after we close the session, if you want to set up a one-on-one demonstration, or if you did have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. Our contact details will be provided along with the recording tomorrow. All right, we'll now be ending the webinar. I just want to say a big thank you to Thais, and thank you to everyone who registered. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Tanya. Have a nice day, everyone.